than that. Up next, William Thomas joins us as we talk about an update on chemtrails and new information on what he believes could be the risk of using cell phones. William Thomas back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory. William Thomas is an award-winning journalist specializing in news that the mainstream media just doesn't report on. He's the author of a number of books as well as several electronic books dealing with cell phones and other electromagnetic hazards. And, of course, many listeners know William Thomas for his work uncovering chemtrails. He's been on the program before, and he'll be on the program again. And here he is now on Coast to Coast AM. William, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Very good, George. Real pleasure to be back with you and our listeners tonight.
Well, let's split the show up tonight. You're going to be with me for 4 hours.
Looks like it, yeah.
Let's split it up, talking about, in the beginning, the dangers of cell phones as you see it. We'll talk about chemtrails later on tonight, and then we'll also devote some time, maybe an hour and a half or so, for phone calls from our listeners, okay?
That'd be excellent.
What's the latest on cell phones? We all use them. How dangerous are they, and why?
Well, we certainly do. I don't, but the rest of us in the Western Hemisphere, over 90% of the population use cell phones. George, we're up to over 3.3 billion people in the world right now. That's over half the population, women, children, and men. So, yes, they're ubiquitous. Everybody's using them. Everyone's enjoying them. In fact, I'd go so far to say, and medical researchers would agree, almost everyone is hooked on them, literally hooked on them. As you noted in your intro, I have written extensively on this subject, and I've just come out with another ebook, ABCs of Cell Phones and Other Hazards of the Wireless Age, because, frankly, I'm very alarmed at the latest findings, the latest studies around cell phones and now this plethora of wireless devices and how they begin to damage brains instantly that they're turned on.
Okay, tell us how that happens, in your opinion.
Okay, well, again, I don't want to I'll flag my opinions tonight on the show.
All right.
This is research here. We're talking some very top researchers who've spent their lives looking into this.
And you're a journalist. You're not a medical doctor.
No, I am absolutely not a medical doctor, and I will not be giving medical advice tonight.
All right.
I will be giving journalistic information. And by the way, quick aside, people listening to this might want to know, well, where does he get that information? All of it is documented on my website and in my ebook. I won't go through it tonight. Very tedious, but it's all fully documented. You can look up these links for yourselves. Okay, back to brain damage. What happens is we put a cell phone up to our skull, and within 2 minutes, there's no controversy on this whatsoever, the blood-brain barrier opens. It's a membrane that keeps the blood circulating in our bodies from carrying damaging proteins and toxins into our brain. Very important barrier. It opens after 2 minutes. It stays open for 5 hours. These proteins can now enter the brain and start to clump together, and research from France, Germany, England, virtually around the world, Australia, has demonstrated and corroborated that this clumping can initiate immediately nerve damage, neuron damage, leading to such things as Alzheimer's, instant aging. One of the red flags that caused me to write another book was this idea of children on cell phones now, children as young as 4, 5, 6 years old being targeted by cell phone companies. Researchers say, doctors say, they will be functionally senile, unable to function in society by the age of 30.
Oh, my God.
We're talking fibromyalgia, all your immune diseases triggered in the brain from this brain damage. Of course, it's not instant. I'm not saying that. If it was instant, we saw someone pick up a cell phone, turn it on, and drop dead. We tend to shy away from it. But like cigarette smoking, it's not. The drastic effects are not immediate. However, the effects are immediate. And we notice it in people around us who say, well, I'm fine, I use these things all the time, and, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that appointment. And what was your phone number again?
Yeah, or who am I talking to?
Yeah, exactly. Memory loss is one of the common complaints of habitual cell phone and portable phone, underline that, users, and that's a sign, early sign of dementia.
Now, how long have cell phones been in existence? Let's see now. I remember
Right.
having one of those big old Motorola's that look like those Army phones.
Yes.
That must have been around 1985, 86. Does that make sense? Right around then?
Well, you're precocious. They were invented actually in Sweden, and they came out with one that weighed dozens of pounds in 1991. The first networks got going in Sweden, Saudi Arabia of all places, other Scandinavian countries, about 1995-ish. We started to see networks crossing the water and becoming common over here in North America. So we are now coming up on the...
So it's 20 years at least, maybe 30.
Well, we're certainly well past the 10 to 15 years incubation periods for cancers that some people warned about from the very beginning. Researchers like Dr. George Carlo, you might recall,
Yes.
did the first big studies for Motorola to prove that these things were safe, found out that they were not safe, and was fired for his trouble, as have been all other researchers working for industry. But now it's very curious because people say, well, where do you think we're going to end up with these things if we keep going the way we are, not only with cell phones, but portable phones, which can be even worse, wireless laptops? It's wireless everything, George.
That's what's doing it, this bombardment of these
Yeah.
wireless electromagnetic waves. How about, I guess, what if you're holding your phone, Bill, and you're just texting somebody?
Right. Well, okay, this is another problem that the Bioinitiative Working Group underlined in their recent report. They looked at all or most of the clinical studies around cell phone damage, cell phone health effects. There's over 1,200 of these studies, by the way, and they correlated them and issued their own report. And they said that one of the big problems, and it's not regulated by any guidelines anywhere, is the idea of modulation. The carrier wave, just the pure carrier wave, may not be particularly damaging, but the minute you put information on it, now we're addressing your question, by voice, text, video, music, the minute we superimpose or piggyback information on a modulated carrier wave, it becomes extremely aggressive and very damaging to the very minute electrochemical whisperings within and between our cells, in our bodies, and our brains. That's the problem here. The pulsing modulated waves are the problem.
Do you see a day where all of a sudden we get a tremendous amount of cancers, tumors in people of a generation of cell phones? I mean, and it just hits us all at one time. We go from number X to number Z, and number Z is in the millions. Is that possible?
I think we're on the cusp. Some researchers are saying that we can look forward to, if that's the right phrase, we can anticipate anyway, 300,000 to 500,000. That's 500,000 brain cancers next year. Next year. I think that we're right on the cusp here in North America. Sweden, I mentioned, actually they came out with their 90-pound mobile. I just checked in 56, and the network, first one was 71, but they didn't get into the pulse networks that we're concerned about until 91. Well, they're there. If we want to know where we're heading, look at Sweden, because they are already ahead of us and they are already there. This is a country, George, that is putting more money into wireless research than the United States does into weapons. That's saying a lot, and it's just about the same thing. A guy I read all the time, people will find him all over the net, Dr. Ole Johansson. He's a very famous neuroscientist at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden. And now he's heading up research, after warning about these things for years, into a worsening public health emergency that he says